but he added in his little line about the song Bohemian Rhapsody. He was like, what the hell? This song will never be anything. It'll never be, it's too long. It's got an opera in it. Do you think kids will really get excited? Do you think kids will really get excited about this rock and roll / opera song together? And he's like talking. It's when, a decade and a half later, they take it and they make it go #1 again when Wayne's World came out. I loved that. That was a nice little piece of business. You're a nice little piece of business right there.
I think now that you say it, that's the first time I ever heard that song.
Yeah, a lot of people have the same thing. When I was in high school and Wayne's World came out, I remember I used to go to A&A Records and Tapes. It was where the entrance to Chapters is in the mall now. It used to be where HMV is, or was. And then there was another one as well. And I would go in there, and like the #1 charted album was.
Hi Joel, hi Jade.
Yo.
You have to say hi to Jade. Jade's loyal. Jade's here like every time.
Jade's amazing.
Candace,
oh my gosh, Leg Day is here. Hey, Leg Day.
Leg Day.
Hey. No, but I'd walk in and the #1 album was Queen Gold. It was their best hits, their greatest hits. And I was like, what? And I flipped it over and I made the connection of so many of these songs that I had heard of before, like We Will Rock You or We Are the Champions or Fat Bottom Girls or whatever. Like, and I'd look at the back going, oh my God, Queen did all these songs that I know, but I'd never made the connection that it was Queen until Bohemian Rhapsody came out. That was because of Wayne's World. Yeah.
Wayne's World. That was like one of my favorite. Me and Jordan, when we were younger, we used to get stoned and watch that like every second weekend.
Really?
Wayne's World.
The first one, or the first one and the second one, or just the first one? Like
the first one.
I felt
the first one.
When's the launch for the Real Deal TV show, which is going to be, it's Lisa Reddle's amazing brainchild.
Lisa Reddle and
others.
And
I think it's all Lisa Reddle. I mean, as
well,
far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're all supporting cast.
I'm not talking about us.
I know.
Who else is one of the main producers?
Well, my wife, Candace Chisholm, Leg Day herself. Leg Day herself.
She was all our hype at the launch party.
Oh, I know.
Better be hyping her up.
She's fantastic.
She snuck us in a few times like we were this established thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, and of course, the world. If you aren't watching that already, you're not one of the cool kids.
Is Lisa already commenting on our production
or
lack
we see
of production?
Face? Oh, you know why though, Lisa? It's because we're pretty much just relying on the natural light that comes through this window. So it's either,
we believe in natural heat and light.
It's either it's light out and we have good lighting, or it's super cloudy and you can't see our faces.
Okay, let's just see if this helps.
We're very professional.
Oh, we're so professional.
I feel really white.
Well, you are really white. You're like how does that help? Does that help?
Okay, it's 12:30. I'm gonna let you do the intro today. You ready? Take a breath. People watching.
Fours of people.
And how many times do I have to tell you not to do that?
Oh, clunk down on the phone? Because the cans hurt your head?
Because it goes through the table, through the metal into the microphone.
Into the microphone, but you hear it in the cans. Do the folks at home hear it? Does the humanity does the humanity hear what we
everything I hear, they hear. That's why I'm wearing these. That's the whole reason. It's not just because I want to be a DJ.
What if it
was just because I wanted to be a DJ, I'll wear them like this or like this and say things like whippa whippa.
Show me your DJ move. If you're a DJ, what would you yeah.
No, I would hold I would have one. And I would just hold it the whole time. And I would, even when things don't change, I would be like, it looks like I'm doing stuff, but nothing changes.
I think my DJ move would be I'd be holding a Game Boy. I'd be holding the Game Boy and then just do this every once in a while. And then just,
on a Game Boy. Okay, ready? Sure. And go.
Welcome to the World of Grey podcast, where we talk about the issues that, I don't know.
Terrible. See, this is why I do the intro.
This is why you do the intro. Yeah, okay.
This is how it's done.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World of Grey podcast. On a world divided by black and white arguments, myself and Mike Chisholm are here to explore the world of Grey.
That's true. Who are you?
I am Kelowna's slightly hungover Cougar Meat Kid.
Yeah, I could tell.
Colin Cutler.
Uh-huh. And I am the unnamed Mike Chisholm. Not slightly hungover, but just reveling over today. But that was a hell of an intro.
It was a better intro than what you did, and that wasn't very good. It wasn't my best intro.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't great. But mine was terrible.
Co-host Hardy Boy.
Hardy Boy's here. You're named after a tag team.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World of Great podcast. Today, we do have some topics. We are structured. I have had to change the time frame two times.
My fault entirely.
2 times today.
I was hanging out at home with Leg Day.
That's cool. That's cool. That's important.
I love Leg Day. She's amazing. So Candace Chisholm, yes, also our biggest hype, also a producer on the show. But
yes,
but
he is.
The Real Deal TV is the brainchild of Lisa Marie.
Correct.
And Lisa Marie Rettle. My sister's name is Eva Marie. Have you ever known somebody with
your sister's name is Eva Marie?
Eva Marie.
No way.
I'm dead serious.
Do you know that Natalie Eva Marie is on Celebrity Big Brother right now?
Really?
Yes.
That is not my sister.
And
not even close.
She's killing it.
Is she?
Killing it.
How do you kill it in Big Brother?
Okay, I'm glad you asked, everyone, and we'll discuss that.
I didn't ask everyone. I asked
and
you.
We'll discuss that at 1 p.m. or 1:15 now when we talk about guilty pleasures.
That was my fault.
So that's a little foreshadowing for you. So we're gonna open
our podcast has foreshadowing.
We have foreshadowing now. Speaking of gray, did you hear that Cheese Whiz is gray before they dyed, or what the hell is it made out of?
Oh man, it's gray.
Do they?
Let's talk about the world of gray. We should get Cheese Whiz to sponsor this podcast.
Yeah, but cheddar cheese don't they dye that yellow? Like, you don't just make cheddar cheese and it doesn't just come out yellow.
The other night on the Real Deal TV show, there were some cheesemongers on there. And it was a really, really enlightening. I'm dead serious. That sentence is real, and it actually really happened. Cheesemongers are going to be on the Real
PG with her topics right now.
Where are we going?
Now did you know that one of the Spice Girls' last names are Chisholm?
Yeah, she's like one of her relatives. Mel C.
She's not one of your relatives.
All the Chisholms, man. Yeah. We have a big clan in Scotland, and they call us all back every so and so.
Is she actually a distant cousin? Is that true?
All the Chisholms are, man. We're all from the Chisholm clan in Scotland. There's not that many of us.
That's insane. So so you go to a family reunion and she's there? Well,
the best shot for that is when the clan actually like brings everybody back to the motherland. And if she showed up, great. I haven't been. I want to go very badly to the next big one they do. It's
So my mom just came in to the chat right now. So while you're watching, Mom, yes, we will drop the dogs off at your house before. I'm going to my dad's for Super Bowl. My mom lives pretty close.
Yep.
So I'm just going to drop the dog. Well, hey, we're here. She's watching. Two birds, as they say.
When I was a kid, I used to, this is what I would say to your mom if I saw your mom. Hi, Mrs. Colin. I would say that if I didn't know her name.
Usually people say Mrs. Cutler. Everybody.
Hi, Mrs. Cutler. Yeah, I bet a lot of people do call her Mrs. Cutler.
Jen gets that too. Mrs. Jen. Kenny Lush always calls her Mrs. Cutler. So
Kenny Lush can do whatever.
We're going to open up the show today. Let's go over the topics today for the next 14 minutes. Now that we've spewed a bunch of bullshit into the 15 minutes we have to discuss, we're going to talk about the 2019 Royal Rumble. Both of us actually have a pretty.
Why is my wife disappointed?
It's dilapidated. Matt, you need glasses.
I do. I actually have glasses. I just don't wear them.
Just doesn't wear them.
She's dilapidated.
Perfect. We're going to talk about the 2019 Royal Rumble results, how we want to know how everybody feels about that. We have a pretty big chunk of this podcast talking about breaking the stigma of mental health issues.
I wouldn't go so far to say the good part of the podcast. That's
no. I said a good amount of the podcast.
Okay.
The main chunk of this podcast. We're going to spend half an hour talking about breaking the stigma of mental health.
Excellent.
Which is a topic that's pretty near and dear to my heart. I'll tell a personal story of my mental health struggles. We'll talk a little bit about the science behind the genetic components and childhood trauma. I have some statistics here on depression as well. And then we're going to end the podcast on a bit of a lighter note and talk about guilty pleasures and why those guilty pleasures are an important thing.
I love that topic.
A crazy and stressful world.
I truly think that guilty pleasures unite all of us.
Right. And it's something that we can all relate to, right?
Sure.
And as two, I like to say, idiots that like to research things and try to not be ignorant in a world full of ignorance, it's still good to shut the brain off and have our guilty pleasures. Wrestling would be one of them. So last Sunday, WWE had its annual Royal Rumble. So this is one of 4 pay-per-views every year that I make sure that I watch. Not that it's the only pay-per-views I watch, but I don't necessarily watch all the pay-per-views. Royal Rumble is always one that I enjoy watching. So first of all, I'd like to know how all the wrestling fans out there felt about Royal Rumble, if you enjoyed it, and then I'm going to talk about my frustrations, and I hate to say it, no offense to the fans, but my frustrations with wrestling fans now when it comes to the WWE product, and I get Chisholm's point of view on it as well.
The Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view of the year. And it's one that even my wife, the mighty Candace Chisholm, or Leg Day as we like to call her, she would watch the Royal Rumble and actually really, really enjoy it. And she's not a huge wrestling fan. She loves the live stuff that we do, but doesn't, go out of her way to watch it. But the Royal Rumble itself is a cool event. And if you don't know how it works, the way it happens is it's a battle royal. So the battle royal is when a lot of wrestlers are in the ring at one time, and you don't pin somebody. What's going on?
Ross for life. Ross is a big independent wrestling fan. And
all right, well, shine on, you crazy diamond. We like to do both sometimes. But in this particular event, it starts off with two wrestlers in the ring, and the object is not to pin the wrestlers, but it's to get them over the top rope. And every 2 minutes, a new wrestler comes into the ring. So at certain points, you get 15, 16 wrestlers in there at one time, and then depends on the year and all that. But it's a very fun event because the countdown of when the next with it, and there's talk about that. How about how the Royal Rumble started this year? The mighty Jeff Jarrett getting a shot with the WWE again. And he's got a spot tomorrow night on Raw. Can you believe that?
Well, and he was on last week's Raw as well. Yeah, Jeff Jarrett, a friend of Invasion Championship Wrestling. I got to wrestle him in a 6-man tag, him and the Bollywood. So before they went to
the Singh
WWE,
brothers.
the Singh brothers, as they're known
Did
now.
you see their figures that got released? And Bret Hart is holding their figures.
Yes.
Oh, how cool was
he's
that
a big
for
supporter
them?
of the Canadians, right? They like to really support each other, which is nice to see. Edge is also someone that they've kind of had some support with. They went for a hike with him and things like that. So the Royal Rumble was interesting, and there's a new development starting last year with Royal Rumble where there is now a ladies Royal Rumble. So,
ladies or women's?
Ladies? Is ladies offensive now? I don't know.
I just
if
think
it is, tell me. Like, I'm okay with political correctness.
I don't think so. I don't think that one's offensive yet. Is there a man? Is there one that's offensive for men? Is there a term?
Asshole.
Yeah, I mean, hey y'all, you assholes. I don't know if that's a really widely used one, but probably widely thought. I mean, with okay, so men and girls, like it's Superman, but Supergirl, right? It's not Superwoman, it's Supergirl. Probably because of the automatopoetically, it sounds better, I would think, Supergirl than Superman. But it can offend an entire gender.
So the Royal Rumble this year. Sorry, we got 4 minutes to talk about the Royal Rumble.
I apologize.
So the Royal Rumble this year, here's my frustration with the critiques. And it's not just necessarily fans. It's just all the critiques that we hear on the internet about Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
So the WWE product has had a bit of a lull lately in the fact that ratings have been down. So the argument here when ratings are down for the WWE product is the fans are always saying that WWE is not listening to what the fans want. Okay. So crowds are constantly saying, oh, this person should be here and this person should get a push and blah, 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 blah. Then they start doing these things. Oh, Seth Rollins is not being utilized enough and Seth Rollins should be back in the main event picture, blah, blah, blah. So Seth Rollins wins the Royal Rumble. Ooh, spoiler if you haven't watched it. Yeah. And everyone goes, oh, that was predictable.
Yeah, exactly. You can't win.
So you just can't win. And this is the thing. It's, watch the product or don't, but there's some pretty brilliant minds that are writing for WWE, and they're not going to get it right every single time. They're not going to give the fans what they want every single time. And sometimes that's on purpose because sometimes you don't give the fans what they want. So you can give them what they want later. And it's a bigger reaction. It's called psychology.
Sure.
And that's what
that's how the whole thing works.
It's the whole thing, how it works. So,
I mean, if you play with our minds,
and if you really don't like what's going on in the long term, you have the option to just not watch it. But it's just this flip-flopping back and forth, and it's just ridiculous.
I think that's happening a lot of the time, though. Like Star Wars fans are the same way. There are Star Wars fans that come out and they will, and I mean, legions of these people who love this product,
everyone's a critic,
but they love to crap on it. And I hope that is something that we're it's an evolutionary bump in the road. I really, really do. And we can kind of get past that, and that entire culture of naysayers or people picking on things just for the sake of picking on it. I hope they kind of go the way of the dodo at a certain point, because to me it's getting old. But there's a lot of keyboard warriors that just want to get out there and have their word put out there.
But I liked Seth Rollins winning. I wanted Becky Lynch to accomplished what she accomplished right after the Oscar match. I was like, okay, well, she needs to be in the Rumble and then go on to wrestle Rowdy. So Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, Ronda Rousey.
So
I heard she might be leaving.
Well, she wants to have a kid. That's what I've heard.
Okay.
And she had some video that went out where she was crying and saying she's letting her family down and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, man.
Kind of mid-run.
I love her.
I think a lot of her promo with Becky Lynch, though, was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it came out of nowhere. And
she's amazing.
Yeah.
Man.
Like,
she's fantastic.
I've always been a fan of her in WWE, but I also grain of salt because she's so new, right? So yeah. I always said she's doing amazing for being so new.
Yes.
I didn't think that she was at this main event caliber level and firing all cylinders, but I mean, for where she was and what spot she had, she was doing amazing.
What I thought about her was that she's different enough, though. Like, I thought that her different moves, like some of the throws that she does, the judo moves that she does, to me, even though she may not have had as much experience as, say, someone like Natty Neidhart or whatever, her moves, the differential style of her moves covered that up a little bit. That's what I always thought about her. Like, I've just loved her right from the start.
So Ross, excuse me.
Yeah.
Ross had a good point saying there weren't very many novelty entries this year.
No.
People always crapped on except for Jeff Jarrett. People still complained about it.
Yeah, see?
And that's the thing.
I love the novelty ones. Like a couple years ago, the Dudley Boys came back. I thought that was amazing. Whenever somebody's been gone for a long time and suddenly they show up in the Royal Rumble, it's like, hey.
That's how Goldust came back originally. Yeah. And then he had one of the best comeback runs I've ever seen.
Mr. Perfect was that way as well. Back in the day.
Sometimes these guys can come back and they're just amazing. Like Billy Gunn, I don't think he was Rumble, but his run when he came back was amazing.
Yep. It's really
he
cool.
Also just looks amazing still.
I would love like a novelty. Okay, who is a novelty person that could come into the Rumble and win the thing and actually go and headline WrestleMania as a surprise to everybody? Is there anybody out there that could do that?
Michaels.
Shawn Michaels would be one that could do that. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be totally believable.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes probably could as well.
So let us know what you thought about the 2019 Royal Rumble. We can always go back to it when we get to Guilty Pleasures if you have anything that you want to add to it.
Pro wrestling is a guilty pleasure for many.
That's very true, myself included.
Yeah.
Wrestling, watching, and, performing.
Right.
So
now now for something completely different.
So we're going to spend the next half an hour here talking about breaking the stigma of mental health and just mental health in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like anyone that's willing to share any of their journey when it comes to dealing with The Rock. That's a good point.
Sure, The Rock could easily do it. Yeah, easily.
Right. We're talking about novelties that could come back and do a main event run. CM Punk.
Oh, CM Punk could do it. Absolutely. Yeah, he showed up as a surprise for sure.
So we're going to talk about mental health. If you have a story of your own mental health struggles, I would love for you to share it. One thing I've noticed with being a little bit more vocal when it comes to my own mental health issues is you start to realize how many people struggle with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest thing with mental health is you feel like you're alone in it. And once you start opening up, you realize you're really not. And it's a good majority of people that suffer with these things.
Well, it's funny. I have a lot of family, mostly on my girl, Candace Chisholm Leg Days side, who are in the holistic healing field. And one of the things that I kind of wrapped my head around as I sort of went down this path, learning about this stuff and hearing what her and her sister and her mom, talk about some of these things, it's amazing how one little concept can really change the shift or can shift focus for you. This is the concept that did it for me. She told me, okay, well, when the body is sick, the body doesn't know the difference between if it's a physical pain or an emotional or a mental pain. And it can screw up your body just the same. And I think the stereotypical example of that is stress and a heart attack, right? You get stressed out, you can have a heart attack, right? Yeah, that's an emotional trigger that creates a physical problem.
So I would assume the science here, and if anyone knows more than me, please correct me when I'm wrong, is any type of stress on the body produces cortisol.
Yeah.
So whether it's mental or physical stress, it'll release cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So this could be why the body doesn't really understand the difference. It's just producing this cortisol as a trigger for you to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of history and why for myself and why I want to talk about this and put this up as a topic is, so I genetically in my family, depression's very prevalent.
Okay.
From my grandma to my dad to my sister to myself. So there's always a genetic component. We're going to talk a little bit more about the genetic component. There's a really good neuroscientist who does a lot on human behavior his name is Robert Sapolsky.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of this guy?
He was on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Joe Rogan did
absolutely,
which is actually go and watch that. Joe Rogan, he wasn't on the podcast, like he wasn't at Joe Rogan.
One
Joe
of the
Rogan
rare
went
Skype
to him.
ones. Yeah,
wasn't a Skype,
or was it?
Joe Rogan went to him.
Yeah,
because he's a very busy man. But he does Stanford lectures. He's a professor at Stanford. You can YouTube his lectures. I used to listen to these lectures while I worked out, which was like not the best like lifting thing. But I was just busy.
The BPM was a little bit lower.
Right. But he has some interesting insights on genetic components and childhood trauma, which we're going to talk a little bit about the statistics there. So it's already prevalent in my family, but in 2015, I had a small medical issue that freaked me out a little bit, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. And while going through that, it released some sort of suppressed issue that I just hadn't been dealing with, right? So a lot of times when people struggle with these mental health disorders, they can just push these, they can try to ignore them, right? Which,
they're just going to go away. It'll wear off.
Right. Or you just power through and you don't talk to people. And a lot of times that just lets these issues fester. So after this issue I had in 2015, it sparked some crazy anxiety and panic attacks and sunk me into a pretty deep depression. Now,
what does that look like for you when you're in a deep depression?
So we can talk about that. One thing I'd like to make clear from my opinion on how depression affects people is I don't like saying the phrase I am depressed or I have depression.
Yep.
Because then you're stigmatizing not necessarily stigmatizing yourself, but you're labeling yourself as having this thing and making it part of your personality.
So what's the alternative?
I go through depressions.
Right? Okay.
So I am susceptible to sinking into bouts of depression.
Gotcha.
Okay. Doesn't mean it's forever. It doesn't mean I'm not going to come out of it. And it doesn't mean it's forever going to go away. Right. It's not something I can just cure and have go away. But so in 2015, this hit pretty hard. So depressions are something I had dealt with ever since I was young, but the panic attacks I never dealt with. I never had to deal with. I had friends that had dealt with these things. I never understood them. I had clients that I would talk to that would go through anxiety things, and I would say, "Oh, well, just work out, and that fixes everything." And going through it now, I realize that's not the case. Panic attacks will manifest themselves in different ways for different people. For myself, it was a freeze type of anxiety and withdrawal within myself. So I would have panic attacks at work and no one would know.
Oh, man.
So one thing I was really good at was faking life while going through these depressions. And
did anyone know?
No, no one.
Jen included.
Well, no, Jen knows, obviously. Like my spouse obviously would know when something's off, and Jen's susceptible to them as well. We always joke that we trade off. Like we both can't go through a depression at the same time.
See, I think men though many times their spouse doesn't know. That's my point.
The only one that knew at work was my old boss, and that was because she kind of pulled it out of me. And but other than that, nobody knew. And I went through. I would have whole staff meetings that I actually don't remember.
Wow.
Because I don't even know. I just would.
Now, would that be during, again, like, because we use the word depression, but many times that's a different feeling for different people. Yeah. So was that a depression or was that a panic attack? Where
those were panic attacks because my entire nervous system would be just shot, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just different. You get that anxious feeling.
Fear?
That's not helping. It's not really fear, but it's just, it takes over your whole body, right? Where depression is just always in the back of your head. It's weighing you down. It makes it hard to really enjoy things. It makes you want to sleep a lot. It makes you just want to not participate in anything really. But at this point, I couldn't really ignore it anymore. So my doctor suggested going through counseling, which I did. And the reason I want to talk about this today is because, that's a great point. Jay Roberts, I'm going to get to that comment, so stick around because that's definitely something I've researched. So I'm going to get into that. Look at
psilocybin.
Psilocybin, yeah. So I went through counseling. It was probably the best thing I could have done for myself, and I'm still, that counselor has moved on to group counseling for addiction. So I'm looking for a new one. So if anyone knows a good therapist that I could go to, that'd be great. Not even therapists, they're counselors, right? They just kind of listen to you.
Yeah.
But this is something that needs to be talked about more. It's something that needs to have a stigma broke. Counseling is a great thing. If you're even slightly considering counseling, I highly recommend it. You're definitely not alone. And this is something you need to take care of yourself, because recognizing it is one thing. And this is where the gray area comes in, is a lot of times we can play victim to a disease, like a mental health disorder, to a disorder, not disease, but disorder. And we can just use it as a way to cop out for participating in life. And if you're not going to do anything about your depression, and here's the other thing, again, the world of gray here, is sometimes you need to do nothing about it. Sometimes you need to stay home and stay in bed. Sometimes you need to go out and drink with your friends, as terrible as that is. Everyone's going to have different mechanisms that help them through small bouts of depression, or help them through parts of that bout of depression. I understand that, but at some point you're going to have to pull up your big boy pants and go get counseling. And that's not to downplay anybody's struggles.
No,
because
of course
I
not.
understand it, because it took me a long time. It took me years and years and years and panic attacks upon panic attacks to finally go, yes, you're right. I need to go get help. As soon as my doctor said, you should look at counseling, I said, you're right. And then I put the effort in. And when you put that effort in, it comes back. And you're only going to get results when you put the effort in.
Okay, so can I ask a question? Let's say that you're we all know people who are like this, who when it's cold and flu season, they get it every year. They're just they're susceptible to that stuff. And over the years, as that happens, if they get a really bad cold, or they get a really bad case of the flu, they have hacks for it. Whatever those hacks might be to help them deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, you've known you're depressed. You can go through bouts of depression for a long time now. Yeah. Do you have any shortcuts for when you're feeling it come on, and you can logically pull yourself out of that emotional state and say, okay, I'm in this state right now. I know how to get out of this state, or I know how to make this state easier. So I'm going to do this, this, and this. Is there anything like that for depression in your experience?
I mean, I'm sure
counseling is one of them, obviously.
I'm sure there are. Counseling would be your best bet. I don't think there's any one size fits all. And like I'm saying, sometimes I'm saying for you. Sometimes I just need to stay home with the dogs and not be around people and have a couple drinks and just try to relax. Right. The other big thing I've come to work on is not ignoring the reasons for why I'm going through these depressions, and to stop blaming my own personality for having these thoughts.
Okay.
So let me explain what that means. Is when these bouts of depression come on, for whatever reason triggers that bout of depression, I used to go, what's wrong with me? There's no reason for me to think that way. Because here's the other thing is, and
try and man your way out of it.
And this is, and this is going to be different for everybody, because everyone's personalities are different, but I'm a fairly altruistic person. So if I would have these chemical, and remember, like, real depression is a chemical imbalance. It's not really something you can control without like time, counseling, and or medication, right? This is a chemical imbalance that just happens.
Yes.
But being an altruistic person, I would have these bouts of depression, and then I would get mad at myself for having these bouts of depression because I live in Canada and I have free health care.
So you'd be frustrated.
I'd be frustrated to the fact that I'm depressed about a life that's very privileged, right? But that's not what it's about. There's components. I had childhood trauma when I was very young that I ignored for years and years and years. When I was 3 years old, I had nothing with my family. This is completely outside, but there was abuse there. And this is abuse that I really don't remember. I have maybe one memory of complete terror and fear from it, but it's something that I grew up in an era where it just wasn't really talked about, and counseling wasn't really a thing. Like, it was offered when I was older and my parents went through the divorce, but it was just not really, no one ever really did that with their kids. So a lot of these issues were swept under the rug. So when I grew up in these bouts of depressions and even now, I never really went back to thinking about that as a trigger, but it can be. And so I'm not going to bore everyone with a whole bunch of statistics, but if you watch some of Robert Sapolsky's lectures on depression, he talks about the genetic component and the childhood trauma triggers that can trigger the genetic component of depression.
Sure.
So the example he gave that I remember was if you had twins that were raised in different families and both of those twins had the genetic component or genetic predisposition for depression, if one of those brothers has 1 to 3 traumas before the age of, I believe it's 5, it could be younger than that, could be older than that, but it's around early in childhood, 1 to 3 childhood traumas, they are way more likely to have that predisposition trigger chronic depression in adulthood, compared to the brother that maybe grows up without these childhood.
So there is a genetic marker for depression.
There's a genetic marker, but the point of this is just because you have the genetic predisposition doesn't mean you're going to go through these depression issues. And just because you don't have this predisposition doesn't mean you will not go through these. There's other factors. But
environmental factors, traumatic factors, things like that.
Correct. But going through those traumatic events and having the predisposition will make you more likely to suffer from these. All right. So unfortunately for myself, I had a childhood trauma before I was, or when I was 3 years old, and I have the genetic predisposition for it. So, I mean, the good thing about doing the research and putting the effort into dealing with this mental health struggle and predisposition that I have is now I'm aware that I'm more susceptible to this. So awareness is key. Counseling is a huge help. So I recommend it to everybody.
Let's go back to the genetic markers for a second. Is there a test for that?
I'm not sure. So your wife is commenting.
I know, I'm seeing
There's a DNA imprinting regarding trauma from generations before. Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I have heard about this. So yes. So what Candace is trying to say, that if you go through traumatic events in your life, that marker can be passed on to your DNA.
Through your DNA, yeah.
And that's a very interesting point to bring up.
Yep.
I don't know what the research is on the severity of that and the percentage chance of you being more so, however that is, but it is pretty amazing. And so I'm the type of person, not type of person, but from a lot of research I had done, I was really swayed to believe that 99.9% of human behavior is environmental and not genetic.
Yeah. There's a big school of thought that teaches that.
There is a big school of thought that teaches that, but I've also read a lot of things recently saying that there are heavy genetic components that, like we're talking about here, that'll trigger those, that will be triggered by those environmental factors. Right. That's not to say that environmental factors don't play a big role. They play a big role from before you were even born.
Yes.
Because there's that, the research they've done on the Black Winter from World War II, which was the Nazis, right?
Yep. World War II was the Nazis.
World War II, when they went into Holland and took all the food it was during the winter, but they took all like the resources and all the children that were not born yet in the third trimester of something like that. I don't know what trimester. I want to say third, but I could be wrong. This is a long time ago since I saw this.
Okay.
But who hadn't been born yet ended up with diabetes issues when they were older, because the fetus will actually try to judge how harsh the world is by how much nutrients is being brought in by the mother.
Oh, wow.
So the environmental factors are already being surveyed by our minds before we're even born. So environmental factors.
Such a fascinating thing.
That is fascinating.
Like I think about, and again, with what some of the stuff Candace was talking about, I've had a couple body talk sessions, and it went through that. It went through, okay, you were having this issue with this person because in your DNA you have, in your genetics you have this, and this, and I can't explain them very well. I'm a moron, but what I do understand is that that I think the holistic side and the science side, they meet in a lot of ways. And then they also meet the spiritual side. Because if you think about it, people, how many times have you heard in your life somebody talk about their past life? Things that have gone on in their past lives. What if past lives aren't really a thing where Colin Cutler or Mike Chisholm lived somewhere else at some point in the way that we know it necessarily, and that's been blocked from us? But instead, what it is, it's our genetic code. And traumatic things or things that have happened within our genetics from previous generations filter their way down through biology to where we are now. And really that is what those imprints are, what past lives are. So
Candace saying it alters the hippocampus in the brain. I suppose if you're around, I would like you to elaborate on that. And so Jade, I would like to bring up something Jade said here, and I'm going to go to this, the psilocybin topic in a second. We got about 10 minutes here, so we do have some time here. So I had said one thing is, oh, maybe it's just hang out with your friends and drink and blah, blah, blah. Jade brings up a good point, and I want to just make clear my point here. I'm not saying rely on alcohol.
Oh, heavens no.
As a way of getting out of depression.
Alcohol is a depressant.
Because, yes, alcohol is a depressant. And some people will try to rely solely on that, and it will 100% magnify that. Yeah. My point was, if you're at an absolute high anxiety stress level where just having a couple drinks and hanging out with friends and having that social inclusion helps level you out, so then you can go through the thought process of how to deal with these. Like, that's all I meant. But I would like to clarify, I don't mean rely on alcohol to get you through depression.
Candy and I, we got a shorthand for it in our household. We call it a governor. Like for me, I believe that part of some of these mental illnesses are rearing their heads because our society is getting so much faster. You know, you think about how quickly it is that, we're expected to have knowledge integrated and our life just rolled in and be successful and all these things.
Instantly successful by the determination of, and this is what we talked about in the last or a couple of podcasts ago. What does that mean when it comes to success? But so she's gonna make me read an article. God damn it.
Yeah, that's what she does. She challenges you. No, but it's I think about that, and I think about how fast our life is getting, and the things that we're expected to do, and what we're expected to be responsible for. So much more, and it's so much more complex than it used to be. And I think that's one of the reasons why mental illnesses are becoming so prevalent. And what we say in our house is we have a governor, and I have a governor. I know it goes. I'm a busy guy. I'm constantly moving fast. And sometimes it'll be from 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning until 8 or 9 at night that I've been moving fast. And I'm cool with that. I love it. I love how busy my life is. But usually around day 8 or 9, my body starts signaling to me that, okay, man, it's time for you to have an underwear, Netflix, guilty pleasure, which segue, time where I need my governor is like, I'm at the limit and it's time to back off for a day. And really, really, really kind of chill and get back to a baseline where my brain and my body are not as fast as they were. Go in the sauna, have some exercise, some guilty pleasure, that sort of thing. And to me, that really, really takes the edge off of some of these things. And I think I would be prone to some of these mental illnesses sometimes. And the governor really helps with that.
So just some quick stats here on traumatic events and depression. So 75.6% of all chronically depressed patients that were reported in this study reported some sort of significant history of childhood trauma. And 37% of the participants that were studied that suffer from chronic depression reported multiple childhood traumas.
Okay, so we're talking about this. What do you think constitutes childhood trauma? Like, I mean, does it have to be something really nasty, or could it just be the right combination of the right things at the right time?
This is what your wife's talking about here.
Okay.
Childhood traumas. So this is the other thing that's come to light. And I'm sure Megan Collins just joined us, and she studied psychology in school. She's a teacher, and she studied psychology in school. So she could probably help us out with this more than a lot of people. And I don't know if this is new research or just something that's become more mainstream recently, but childhood trauma will actually physically change your brain. It'll physically change the hippocampus. which looks like a seahorse. I just found out by the description your wife just sent us.
She's amazing.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I would say just any traumatic event that would change the actual structure of the brain to function differently, right? But I think it would be some sort of serious event, like sexual assault is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah. I think that's my thing. I think many of us go to physical or sexual. I think that's where our mind goes when we think about childhood trauma. And I guess my question is it beyond those obvious ones as well?
That'd be a great question for Megan Collins if she's still around.
Or Dr. Sapolsky.
So, yeah, but Robert Sapolsky isn't watching this right now.
No, that's for sure.
Megan, the question is, we're talking about depression.
What constitutes a childhood trauma?
What constitutes a childhood trauma? We're talking about the correlation between childhood trauma and early, or adult chronic depression.
Yeah.
She's probably not been watching anywhere. Or she's typing something epic. We're not sure yet. But it's a great question. And I honestly don't know the answer to it. Mine was... I don't know if I want to talk about it.
No, you don't have to talk about it. But it was childhood trauma.
It was
it was one of those things where it was trauma.
It was physical and slightly sexual abuse. I'll talk about it. I don't care. When I was 3 years old, we had... I guess
that turned quickly.
I'll talk about it. When I was 3 years old, I had a babysitter and I have very vague memories from this, and there is a discrepancy of the frequency of this because I believe that it happened more often, but when it went to court, it said it had the girl who was being accused of this and the mom who technically wasn't around when it happened said it only happened once. I vaguely remember it happening multiple times, but I was 3 years old, so I don't know. What would happen is our babysitter at the time, I was 3 years old, my sister was 7. The babysitter would leave with her youngest daughter, and they would go do groceries or whatever, and they would leave the oldest daughter in charge of all these kids. And in my recollection, every time she would leave us with her, she would spank all the kids for no reason.
Okay.
She would bring us into a room, sometimes one by one, sometimes all together. I remember
it's almost ceremonial.
I remember one time where a spatula was involved. The only real memory I have from it, was picking up toys and being terrified. So what I believe is she would get us to clean up because she was probably supposed to do that and threaten us with the physical abuse if we didn't clean up. Right. And then we would clean up and then she would just hit us anyways.
Jeez.
So that's the vague memories I have. I only found out, this is the fucked up part, is I only found out this year while talking to my mom that this babysitter didn't even get her license pulled because she begged my parents to not go to the board that deals the licensing board because she said it only happened once. And I talked to my sister after this conversation with my mom, and my sister's like, no, it happened more than once. And she was 7. So from my perspective, it happened multiple times. Then it went to court. Then they were punished. And I only found out this year that she didn't even lose her license. The daughter was like 16, so she only ended up with community service.
This adds tremendous insight. I've always wondered why because you have a very strong stance when it comes to spanking. You have a very strong stance when it comes to it. Like you're very, you want to talk about world of gray. You're very black.
But that's also because, and not necessarily. I understand the gray area. I understand why parents want to discipline their kids.
Absolutely.
I understand that when the verbal discipline and the timeouts don't work, why we think it would be better to just go to the spanking.
Sure. But
when my dogs are barking and not listening to me, I smack them on the ass.
Yep.
But they're dogs, and I'll never know if they have future adult trauma.
Would you do that with a human child?
I would not. And the reason
that's what I mean by you're black.
But that doesn't mean I can't discuss the gray area in here, right?
Gotcha.
The reason why I don't believe parents should spank their kids, and I'm not saying that I think it should be illegal for parents to spank their kids.
No, and
because
as Lisa
that's
Marie's,
government intervention to parenting, and that's whatever. That is what it is. However, the reason sometimes people.
I know. Yeah, I've been waiting to.
The reason why I don't believe parents should spank their kids is because there was so much fucking research on it.
Yeah.
That proves that spanking causes aggression in adults. And then when you go to the forums of the people arguing for spanking their kids, they're the ones screaming and yelling and swearing about how they should be allowed to spank their kids, saying, "Oh, well, I got spanked and I turned out fine. This is bullshit." Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
blah,
I think
blah.
it's a big part of that.
You're aggressively trying to prove that spanking doesn't cause aggression in adults. Like, you're proving the fucking point.
But part of that, though, is the teams thing that we talk about. We always come back to this team thing that we got to get out of. We got to break the cycle of that. Some people are just like, you know what, I'm on team circumcision because I got circumcised and I turned out okay.
Lisa's just proving our point. My dad belted me and look how I turned out. So exactly.
Well, I would argue that he did it in just the right way, because she's just the right amount of whatever. And if whatever caused that, Lisa's awesome. I love Lisa.
It was a joke.
Yeah, I was joking there too. Yeah.
But the other thing is we just don't know, right? No. We don't know if it's affected us. Did
your mom ever spank you?
No, God, no. I got abused when I was 3, spanking. No one ever spanked me after that.
Okay.
There's no fucking way anyone was spanking me after that.
Right on.
There's could you imagine if I went through that traumatic event and then my parents spanked me in discipline?
I can imagine it only from a place where those parents would have taken that extraordinary situation and kind of just separated it out and said, okay, he got some undeserved spankings there, but he just broke all grandma's china. Then, so,
but if that would just be feeding PTSD. Could you imagine?
Well, now, yeah, but okay, no, but actually, we didn't know what PTSD was back then.
Ironically, sexually, I don't mind being spanked. So,
well, there you go.
So figure that shit out.
Okay.
that's some Freudian shit there.
Some advice for Jen Cutler right there.
No, she knows.
Well, clearly, yeah.
I'm so glad.
I was more making the Jen Cutler joke.
I was gonna say I'm so glad she's not watching this, but she can totally hear us. So.
Oh yeah.
Love you.
All right. I think it's safe.
But anyway, so we're talking about depression. We're talking.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna ask that question. Do you think that spanking thing that you like, that you just talked about, that we joked about with Jen or whatever, do you think that came from that event?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
There's a chance though, right?
I don't know, maybe.
It's 50-50, probably.
Things.
Oh man.
So I'd like to switch gears a little bit here. So Jade Roberts said one more thing. To be perfectly honest, too, I don't really mind talking about that story because I was 3. What the fuck? I don't remember much about it.
My wife's engaged in this podcast, which I'm thrilled about. All right. Yeah. We should be at the place where we're both not reading at the same time.
Honestly, I think with so much research out there now,
working out the kinks.
Here, I would actually like to say one thing about the spanking thing.
All right.
Okay. So parents spank out of frustration because they try other disciplinary tactics that don't work, and this is the last resort.
Yes.
I think that there's enough research out there that we should be able to find ways to get down to a child's level and try to explain the situation to the kid and get them to understand the perspective and why what they're doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. However, and I had this conversation with a girl that works at the Y who has kids, who, I'm not saying she spanks them, but she's admitted to yelling at her kids at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
She's frustrated. And here's my argument, and this is where anyone conservative here, so Lisa Marie, you can argue away. This is where I don't say I'm really too far left, but this is where when I say things, people put up a stop sign or a red light. I believe that human beings are not meant to raise children and work 40 hours a week.
Oh, I see where you're coming from.
Okay. To be perfectly honest, I don't believe humans should have to work 40 hours.
Again, it's pushing us to the limit of, yeah. Okay.
I really don't. I think we should strive to get to a point in human evolution and technology where we don't have to spend the majority of our lives at jobs we hate, or being forced to work. I'm not saying that humans don't want to participate in society for more than 40 hours a week. I think that if we just had the choice of how to contribute, we might work more than 40 hours a week. I don't think humans should have to work 40 hours a week. I don't think we should have to work 20 hours a week. I think we are at a point now where we should be able to house and feed everybody, and people should be able to work just enough to slow mental health issues. So I think the stress of having to work so much causes a lot of mental health issues. But think about this. if you have a 2-income household because you have to, you work 40 to 60 hours a week, which is extremely common. Then you come home at the end of the day and your kids who have not seen you and are now acting out possibly for this reason. And I don't have children, so what the fuck do I know? Are misbehaving, and you are just so stressed out and you don't have the energy to sit them down and get to their level and figure out why they're acting the way they are. What are you going to do? Go to your room, get the fuck out of my face. And like, what do you expect? How do we expect people to parent? And this is why I'm saying I'm not black and white on the argument of spanking. This is why I'm saying I understand the frustration of parents at the end of the day and wanting to just use physical discipline to discipline their kids.
Okay, but hold on a second. Like, okay, let's just say for a second that spanking is an issue that is right on the cusp of trauma. Okay, so you spank your kid. If you don't do it in the exact right, proper way, like you're doing it with love, you're doing it calculated, you're doing it completely unemotional, not because of frustration or whatever, like you're right on the edge of creating trauma. The alternative for that is not just to take the regulation that spanking is frowned upon now or not allowed or whatever it is, and then create trauma from a mental standpoint either. Like we put them in solitary for an hour and then we, go do our dishes and we realize, okay, it's time for them to come out now, realizing that could also create that type of trauma, but just a different type.
100%. And like, I don't know what the answer is here now. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do with your kids. Again, I don't have kids. I did see this amazing video though of a dad who like, he looks like Daughtry, Daughtry, the singer.
Yeah, the Vin Diesel kind of look.
Yeah, he kind of looks like he has like the leather jacket and like the little hipster toque, and he looks like a badass dad. And his kid's acting up. And
#badass dad.
And the kid was upset about something and acting out and getting all mad. And he like crouches down to her level and is basically the sum up of what he's trying to say to this kid is you're allowed to feel the way you're feeling. You're allowed to be upset, but like, I love you. I'm here for you. You can talk to me about why you're upset, but it's not okay to maybe like talk to us, like project it. Right. Yeah. This is like, you don't project your feelings, but don't ignore your feelings. Right. And you're allowed to feel the way you are. And like, it's actually a very emotional video because the pure love that comes out of this dad and just the wanting to be there for his kid. And that's all of us really want is to feel connected and listened to and validated in our behavior at any age. And to take a child that's upset and screaming and misbehaving and to just force them into their room or to yell at them or to physically hit them. Like, how is that building character and teaching these children anything? And it slowly gets it's a culture that we're breeding when we do these things. So, but
it's a slippery slope though, because you look at adults sometimes.
Hold on one second.
Finish.
This is a podcast for the people here.
All right.
So Jade Roberts said, Lisa's agreeing with something, so I got to go back. And Jade Roberts, first of all, I'd like to just give a shout out to Jade Roberts for always participating in this podcast. This is what this podcast is about. I want to hear people's opinions. And Jade Roberts, a huge wrestling fan. He's actually a friend of my sister's from back in the day. We actually wrestled once when we were younger.
Early adopter of the World of Grey podcast.
Yes. So he says some parents punish their children, some parents discipline their children, and some don't know the difference between it. And
exactly.
Wow, that was amazing.
Exactly.
That was some philosophical shit.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very true. And again, in this crazy world where we're all just trying to survive, like that's the one thing we all need to realize with all these issues in the world. We all need to take a step back and realize that we're all just trying to fucking survive in this world.
And that's what we need to do. We need to talk about them because we provide insights to each other. Maybe there's somebody out there right now who's grappling with this very issue and they're not exactly sure how to take control of it, but at the end of the day, the next time they get frustrated, maybe a little switch goes off in their head going, oh, you know what? I'm acting right now out of frustration, not out of the well-being of or wanting to correct the behavior of my child. And maybe that'll make them stop.
So I'd like to stay on this topic just a little bit longer, even if we morph it to even what we're talking about now and not necessarily depression. If you
hold on, you're not going to talk about spanking being a guilty pleasure.
No.
Okay.
So
we're gonna put the two together.
At 1:30, we will move on to guilty pleasure. So we're gonna spend another 8 minutes here if anybody wants to keep discussing this. So,
yeah.
And I think this is an interesting topic to get to because are we not only causing aggression in these children, but what if these children have the predisposition for depression, and are we triggering that? Yeah. So, and I don't have the research on that.
See, and then
I'm not really sure.
Then there's the other factor of the kids that were spoiled along the way. And at the end of the day, like Joe Rogan will say this, sometimes there are grown men out there that just need to get their ass kicked. They just need to be knocked down a peg. They need to be kind of brought back into the land of reality, that sort of thing. And that kid should have been spanked as a child. Used to be something that was in our vernacular. You don't hear it very much anymore, but that is a legitimate personality.
I'm going to throw this out more as a question then instead of my opinion. Do you think that socioeconomic advantage plays a role here?
I think
in that attitude,
I think it can.
Okay.
I think it can, but I also think that I mean, kids who are brought up with love and with limits and boundaries under any socioeconomic background, like I mean, I know a lot of very well-adjusted kids that came from high net worth families.
My cousin Jeremy, his parents not like crazy rich or anything, but they did very well for themselves. And he is one of the greatest human beings. Like he's a much better person than I am, for sure.
Wow. You heard it here first. Let's get him on the podcast.
Jeremy actually has, I think, done 2 trips to Mexico to build houses.
Oh,
for the
that's
poor.
Awesome. That's why you think he's better, because he's more charitable?
No, not at all. He's just a good dude. And he's just
so are you, man. Dude. You're a good dude too.
But he's got a good head on his shoulders. He knows how to he's an he's well educated. He's an accountant. Like he does very well for himself. He's just an all around good human being that in the world that we live in. I'm very disconnected from what you would say is like common society. And I have very fringe ideas, and I very much am cynical to the world. Jeremy knows how to live within the world of gray.
How old is Jeremy?
Jeremy's 26.
Wow. So, okay.
27.
That's interesting.
26.
I've often thought about you, that you were person in their late 20s, early 30s. And it's been fun to watch your personality kind of work, because I know mine certainly has. When I was in my 20s, I was really opinionated. I thought I knew it all. In my 30s, I started realizing that I'm a fool. And now in my 40s, I'm like, holy cow.
Well, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yes,
and then the more you learn, you don't know. Like
the more you know.
The more you know, the more you don't know, right?
Correct.
Sorry, I just want to say I just want to read one comment from Jade.
All right.
And also, he's giving everyone some love for giving him love, because he's a good dude, right?
It's a love fest on the World of Gray today here.
But he said, on
Super Bowl Sunday.
Sometimes when my kids piss me off, I put myself in timeout before dealing with the situation. So
super wise. That's wisdom.
I'm getting a little like teary-eyed emotional right now, because this is like we're getting into some really good topics, and this is like warming my heart, and I'm pretty hungover, which makes me like chemically a little bit emotional. But I just love that we're all kind of working this stuff.
This is the World of Gray. This is what it's for.
All right.
This is what the World of Gray is built for. It's built to talk about things where we can feel safe, talk about our opinions, our points of view on things, without it actually turning into something where it becomes a hotly contested, angry fest.
And we could be wrong.
We are wrong. We're always wrong.
I think I just snotted on the microphone.
All right. Well, and that's really what we want to build with this thing. And as we grow it, and as we grow the community, what our hope is that we become a richer community for this, without a ton of trolls. And then the trolls are going to come, and we're going to make fun of the trolls. But at the end of the day, if we can, what are you doing? How does that sound in the cans when you do that? What does the humanity think about you eating chips while on the Crispy Minis? Not a sponsor of the World of Gray.
Yeah, we're gonna get sued hard.
Yeah, well, no. We're showing shout outs. Like, what do you? Yeah, we're not gonna get sued for that.
I'm not that hungover, but I was chugging tequila out of the bottle in a car yesterday. I'm broke, man. I can't afford to go out. So me and a coworker just drank tequila in a car and then went for a nappy.
Well, good for you guys.
It was actually fun.
Where'd you go?
I don't know. We might not get let back in there if they know we were drinking in the parking lot.
Oh, of course they will.
You buy more. I'm not going to say it.
Really?
Yeah. We went. Okay, fine. We went to train station. Their plating is amazing.
Train station's amazing.
But their plating now is so nice.
Yeah, they're dialed in.
We had a great time.
They're dialed in.
Guys, Michelle from Rutland that runs the group. I drank. She didn't really. But I hadn't caught up with her forever, so it was good. It was good for my mental health. We're kind of besties.
Mental health day.
So
are we going to guilty pleasures, or are we gonna?
We got 3 minutes. So I think poor people are those who struggle. Generally raise better people. They are entitled. I disagree. A little bit.
we have a disagreement on the podcast.
I don't 100% disagree. I think people in lower socioeconomic households can raise better kids, and I feel just going through that can give you a different perspective on the world. So as someone who grew up in a low middle class family and never had anything bought, not that my parents didn't help me out when they could, but my schooling for personal training I paid for myself, my schooling and expenses for wrestling I paid for myself, although I did stay with my aunt when I was there, so that was a huge help. I've done everything myself, everything. And not saying like I'm this crazy success, look at me, and I'm a billionaire from the Bronx, but the little successes that I do have been me. And it does have good and bad, because it's hard for me to accept help from people. But I also am very proud of everything I've ever done, because I've done it myself.
Okay, hold on. I think you're putting together a couple different things into one here. I think
I'm going to explain it.
All right.
You go ahead.
I just one comment, and then you can go back on that. I believe that it doesn't matter the socioeconomic point, background to a point. If you grow up in a household full of love, whatever that household is, if it's full of love, like, you know, you read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you know, you had two sets of grandparents all in bed. They never got out of bed, but there's a lot of love in that house. And that's why Charlie was such a good kid. Yeah,
so Candace is kind of transitioning into the point I'm trying to make. And there is actually a book I read called The New Human Rights Movement. Apparently it's the only book I've ever read, because I mentioned it a lot. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. But it talks about human behavior and socioeconomic trends throughout the entire book, right? So this is where a lot of my correlation with the two come from. And this is a highly researched book. So are we talking about low middle class incomes, or are we talking about poor, right? So the question is, if we eliminated poverty, including relative poverty, right? Yep. Would these abuse issues go away? So would a lot of these childhood traumas be non-existent?
I say no.
So, okay, that's a fair point. I feel like a lot of them would. So here's my example. So here's my reasoning for this. Let's say you have someone that has two kids, a wife. He's the sole income provider for this household. He works for a factory and he makes $17 an hour, $15 an hour, and he's barely getting by, and they're living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
He's got a foreman that's constantly yelling at him, telling him he's no good. He starts drinking because of the stress. So there's a drinking component to this.
Yep. Snowball is happening.
It's a snowball.
It's happening. It's growing.
He's being shit on at work. So what does he do? He goes home.
The avalanche.
He uses the power he has over his wife and his family, and he perpetuates and projects those feelings onto his family, maybe physically, maybe mentally, right?
You can also have him vice versa. He's that victim at home, so he goes to work and he destroys all the people that are under his
So I think that socioeconomic pressures cause a lot of criminal behavior, and I think if we were able to alleviate these socioeconomic pressures or economic pressures, that a lot of these crimes would go away.
I think it would change, but at the end of the day, there is something that is triggering behavior that is already inherently there.
Okay, but here's what my point
is. If we remove the triggers,
is those childhood triggers that might happen are, I almost guarantee, dollars to donuts if you look into why it's being pushed onto these children from the adult figure. It's socioeconomic.
But what about what we were talking about before, that stuff in my DNA or my genetic code right now has stuff from the Scottish Chisholm clan back in the war of whatever.
Sure.
And so that has come into
But then you add socioeconomic pressure on top of
that. It becomes the trigger,
and then it becomes the trigger. I think if you were to alleviate those pressures, a lot of these crimes would go away. Why would you have to? Why are we stealing things? Right. Like crime would go down for theft, for a lot of like physical abuse, assault, substance abuse would go down, which also triggers a lot of criminal behavior. So I think what this book will argue is that is the root cause of a lot of mental health issues and criminal behavior.
You can't argue that. Of course, it's a cause of a lot of it.
Right. So, anyways, so great discussion, everyone. I'll go through just a couple comments and then we'll move on to guilty pleasures, because I'm really excited for that, because I think we're just going to end off on a lighter note here.
Once again, something that is completely different.
Yeah, but I like to flip flop it, right? We'll have something a little fun. Spoiled kids don't know. Yeah, sure. So, and on the other flip of the coin, spoiled kids tend to not understand consequences, and that definitely can be an issue, or just struggle, right? So then when struggles do happen, they just don't have the mechanisms to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Love solves all of this, by the way.
And again,
I believe love solves all of this.
World of Gray. Candace has a good point saying, would it lessen them? Sure. Would it go away? I think that's lofty. So I agree. I don't think necessarily everything's going to go away, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think it would be easier to deal with what's left over after the socioeconomic pressures would go away. Okay. So the last little topic we're going to talk about till about 1:45, maybe 1:50 if everybody is interested in it, is guilty pleasures.
I love this topic.
This is a good transition.
It's a great topic.
For me, my guilty pleasures are a big help when it comes to these little depressive,
especially being spanked.
Yes, a different guilty pleasure now.
Well,
or a different version of spanking.
Hey man, different levels of pleasure, I suppose.
Like the unnamed, untitled Mike Chisholm was saying, sometimes you just got to put PJs on and watch Netflix.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw it out to the people, and while they comment, I'll ask you, but what are your guilty pleasures that you like to enjoy? So Mike Chisholm, what is your biggest guilty pleasure?
It's going to be a food one. You know what? Mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese. Okay. So when you make the mac and cheese, is it just straight up like craft dinner, or are you making mac and cheese and like putting bacon in it and then covering it with cheese and breadcrumbs and baking it, or what?
All of the above. I went through a
span of hot dogs.
I would do that sometimes. Ooh. Yeah. Or those big garlic coils you can get from the Costco's, and
you know what's good?
Chunks of that.
Cut up hot dogs. Start sauteing some diced onions. Throw the hot dogs in the pan and then put some barbecue sauce over it. Jesus. And caramelize the barbecue sauce and onions in together.
We're getting close to macaroni casserole territory, folks.
Mac and cheese.
Oh yeah.
Throw it right in there.
I like doing
sweet and spicy.
I like doing fun, creative things. Like the other day, I had we got the Costco pack of the Annie's, and we don't eat it very much out of the box.
Of the Annie's cracked in. Is that like organic Annie's?
Yeah, it's like supposed to be healthier or whatever. And they had 2 flavors in there, and I was like, you know what?
Growled because he was falling asleep.
Oh, Hardy! I made a pot of mac and cheese, but I put in 2 boxes, and I put one of each flavor. One was the white cheddar, and the other one was like the cheddar. Yeah. And put them together. And to me, that was just like, I don't know. I don't understand why I was so satisfied and just felt so proud of myself to have this meal. I ended up being at the house alone that night, and Candy was out somewhere, and I forget what had happened. But anyways, it was like a Friday night, and I was at the house alone, and I'm like, you know what? I'm making a couple boxes of mac and cheese and playing some Mario Odyssey. And that just, Mario would probably be another guilty pleasure that I have.
We're talking about guilty pleasures. I think your wife just threw that up in case anyone had just joined and was wondering what the hell we were talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about guilty pleasures.
We're
not talking about mac and cheese, although I could probably do a podcast on mac and cheese, and it sounds like you could too. You've got some games on. You know what to do with that mac and cheese. What about you, man? What's a guilty pleasure for you?
So Jade Roberts says, I like what you're saying. Guilty pleasures don't always need to be or feel guilty. Embrace the cure. Be aware of the consequences. That's and Hardy just moved him.
Yeah, I feel guilty though because it goes right to my tummy. I know it's not necessarily the best form.
Candace is shopping for pillows. Shopping for pillows is her guilty pleasure.
She loves it.
You've talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah, she loves the cushions, man.
She loves
going and finding new cushions for the house. And she'll come home with new pillows and be like delighted. And she'll give me.
She likes watching 600 Pound Life. I've seen that.
That's a guilty pleasure for her.
So why do you enjoy watching 600 Pound Life? Does it make you feel better about your own choices? I can have this donut because I'm not 600 pounds.
I can answer that a little bit because I'm married to her. She finds the stories inspiring because usually there's an arc where they go from something to something.
I don't mean to cut you off, but Lisa Marie's about to go have a nap. So thank you for joining us. Her guilty pleasure is watching YouTube videos of living off the grid and building underground bunkers. Interesting.
That sounds about right.
You need to have a party in your underground bunker. Sorry, continue.
That sounds about right. Continue. No, I was done.
Okay. So my guilty pleasure, I have a couple of guilty pleasures. My guilty pleasures tend to also Hardy. He's knocking the mouse off.
Hardy's a guilty pleasure. Hey, buddy.
My guilty pleasure kind of contradicts a lot of my own moral beliefs and things like that. And I'll tell you, not in like a criminal way.
Everything in moderation, including moderation.
One of my guilty pleasures is poker.
Yeah.
So as somebody that's not like the biggest believer in our version of capitalism, I always say it's ironic and I'm a hypocrite because poker is literally capitalism on a table.
I love to play the
you're
poke.
Like slightly bending rules and cheating and like lying and trying to get advantage for monetary gain.
Sure.
But I absolutely love poker. It's one of my like favorite things in the world. That's why I have this. I can't turn my arm in a way.
Someone's having problems with perspective.
Right? Because this cards.
Yeah,
sorry, this camera is like flipped when we turn Facebook on. So
we're backwards.
In
more ways than one, my friend.
Single random sex is Jade's guilty pleasure.
Well,
that's funny. Hey. I don't feel guilty about it. Yeah, sex is obviously a good. I don't say guilty pleasure. Sex is a beautiful thing.
It's a physical pleasure too.
But one of my biggest guilty pleasures that some people know, and I've actually applied for it a few times, is Big Brother.
Yes,
and Survivor.
You love. I like the Survivor.
I love any social game where like social psychology game.
Yep.
And I love trying to figure out game strategies that would work better. And like Celebrity Big Brother is on right now. It's like a condensed version. They get $250,000 instead of 500. And it's only like a month and a half. And they're allowed to tweet. We just found out
they can tweet while in the house.
They're not allowed to have their phones, but they have a tab. There's one room because they're celebrities, and that's like a big thing for celebrities. They have to keep their tweets up, their Twitter followers. So they have like a little tablet that's just like hooked into something, and they have a room where they can go in and they get tweet time, and they go and they tweet.
Really?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
If I was in there, one of my strategies would be to somehow distract one of the other contestants so I could get in and tweet for them on their Twitter. I've never watched Big Brother, but that would be a strategy that I would try and implore. Big Brother is a real guilty pleasure, but you love Big Brother.
And so does Jen. It's like a kind of our guilty pleasure together.
When you applied to be on, did you get an interview?
So I've applied a few times. I did get semi-finalisted once, and yes, I went and I didn't go and do an interview. They asked me to, and I said no. They wanted me to go to Vancouver.
There's a real team player there.
They wanted me to go to Vancouver, and it was like a Thursday, Friday. No, it was a Saturday, Sunday, and they say if they like you have to say Monday, Tuesday. And I said I'm not. And so I was like, no. They're like, excuse me? These are producers from LA. And they said, excuse me? And I said, because no one says no to them. I said, sorry. I said, I can't afford to make the trip down there and pay for the trip down there on the off chance, and lose 2 days of work on the off chance that I might get finalisted to maybe go.
Okay.
And like, it's
okay. Hold on. I'm going to talk to you about your psychosis here. And this is your psychosis. You need to get out of the idea of not being able to ask for help. If you would have laid out exactly what you just said onto a message and thrown it out there for your friends, because we're talking about $1,000 here, probably about $1,000.
You think someone would have given me $1,000?
Are you kidding me? I would have contributed 150 myself. We all
never done this.
This is where we got to talk about your psychosis, because we would have been like, are you kidding me? For our friend to go have a potential for his dream to come true.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Oh my God. I would be so in on that.
Anyways,
I'd be like, let's get Colin there.
So what happened is I said no. I explained to them why. And the guy goes, okay, I'll call you back. Okay.
And he never called you back.
No, he calls me back.
Oh.
And he goes, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to Skype you in on a one-on-one interview. So here's the time, set this up, fill this out, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
I ended up doing a Skype interview, which I was super nervous for. They actually told me to have a couple drinks. I had this list of like ways to prepare for it. They said, have a couple drinks, don't get drunk, but have a couple drinks so that you're a little loosened up.
Wow.
But yeah, and I did the interview. It was fine, but they were looking for so many personalities and they ended up filling it with. So it's funny though, because in the interview, I talked about wrestling and like the politics of wrestling and how sometimes you have to kind of manipulate your way into getting the match getting the match to go the way
I think that's a great analogy if they understand that
at
all.
And so they talked about that for a while, and then I talked about poker and the psychology of poker and blah, blah. And so they don't pick me that year, but these are the LA producers. So the same producers for America. So they don't pick me that year. And I've talked about poker and why that would, like, anyone that plays poker would be good on Big Brother and wrestling. That year, Canadian Big Brother, they brought on a professional poker player, Kevin, who did not win that year, but won an all-star season later. And he was amazing. And I wanted him to win the first time. And then the same year, they brought the Luchasaurus. from Lucha Underground, Austin.
Yeah,
his name's Austin something. Austin, who's a independent wrestler. He's a giant independent wrestler who had some WWE buzz and was kind of on the radar. They brought him in that year, same year. It
was like Johnny Nitro on Survivor. I think wrestlers make perfect.
He was awesome.
Yeah,
well,
I think they make
not
perfect.
Always. Ashley.
No, Ashley got beat.
She was first one out when she had her run on Survivor, but Johnny Nitro did great. Johnny Mundo did really good. The only reason he lost is because his ally was getting voted for. Yeah. No, his ally had an immunity idol and played the immunity idol. So they had thrown a few. It was a random thing. It was almost random. The tribes were divided in votes, but so it was like this side had a few more and this side anyway. So then they were voting for one person and they thought that tribe was going to vote for this guy. So he played his immunity idol, but then the other tribe very strategically threw 2 votes out for Johnny Nitro. So it wouldn't go to a decision. Like wouldn't go to a tie and then a revote. Yeah. And then he just got beat because of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they all really liked him, but he just was on the other side. Right?
There's a guy on The Bachelor named Kenny King. He's a wrestler, and he did very, very well on that show. He's not because he got the girl Kenny King.
He was on Survivor?
No, he was on The Bachelor.
Oh, The Bachelor.
Yeah, and he's been on like 2 or 3 of their spin-off shows since then. And I believe that pro wrestlers actually have an advantage in reality shows because of the having to think on their feet and negotiating with politics and things like that. I think that those are tremendous skills for that.
But I think when it comes to guilty pleasures, those 2 shows are definitely my biggest guilty pleasure.
Reality shows are for a lot of people, clearly. The Bachelor, I think, would probably be a very, very, very popular guilty pleasure for people. For a lot of people.
Housewives.
Yeah. Do you have food guilty pleasures?
Do I have? Yeah, of course. I think everyone does. What would be my chips?
Chips is yours, hey?
Salty. Yeah. I'm not really
my wife is the same way.
Sweets person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't, like, if I buy a bag of chips, I'll most likely eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What else do you feel guilty about? Oh, are we done?
I think that's it.
Are there any guilty pleasures on there that we should publicize?
Well, we did a little bit. Candace talked about 600-pound life, which is
awesome. Yeah.
Lisa talked about YouTube video. I think YouTube videos are a big one.
Yeah,
for a lot
YouTube
of
YouTube can be a dark hole where hours go away. It can be a time warp, man.
I will say, and I don't admit to or deny being under the influence of anything when I do this, but sometimes I like to go down,
which means he was.
I sometimes like to go down conspiracy rabbit holes, not because I believe them, just because when you really get into them, sometimes you can really get convinced almost. Like we talked about on the conspiracy podcast, I talked about that amateur rocket that they said was hitting like the flat earth thing. And like you can really get sucked in. And then when you really look through it, you're like, oh, right. So yeah, I think YouTube can be a guilty pleasure.
YouTube absolutely can be a guilty pleasure. We never did get back to psilocybin. Speaking of guilty pleasure, what about the mushrooms?
Yeah. So
maybe we're buttoning this podcast up by putting the 2 things together.
Yeah. So
some people have the guilty pleasure of mushrooms.
So Jade,
they like the mushrooms.
Mentioned psilocybin. So let's just kind of go back to this topic, just real quick when it comes to depression. So psilocybin is the main drug in magic mushrooms, the recreational drug, and they have research and data on microdosing psilocybin to help with anxiety and depressions. And all I'm going to say here, and we can elaborate on this in a later topic. Maybe I'll do some more research and we can pull that out. That psilocybin is the only drug that has been researched and administered in a research setting that has had the positive effects for the length of time that it's had with 1 dose. What that means is after microdosing participants 1 time, they experienced a reduction of anxiety and depression symptoms for up to 4 months.
That's crazy.
4 months with 1 dose. And these are the drugs that we have that are illegal and that have real lack of research. So pretty crazy. So it's a very interesting thing. Pete.
I'm going to, Pete, I'm going to talk one last time on a guilty pleasure, plus also the mental illness thing. For me, the float tank really, really, really helps with things.
Yeah.
And we could do an entire podcast on that. I would like that to be a topic. If there's a mic,
we should see if Lisa will give us equipment and we should go down and talk to them And I'll pay to do it for the segment, but if they want to let us in free, that's great.
For the float tank?
Yeah, we should go down there and interview them and video us trying it out.
Dustin would do that in a second for us. I do.
Get a hold of them. Let's do a segment for World of Grey for the Real Deal.
For the Real Deal. Yeah.
I love it. I think that should be our first kind of segment.
Lisa's napping right now, so she can't make the decision.
Lisa's napping, but if she's tagged in this, so hopefully she'll go to the end and watch this. So yeah,
Candace might be able to make that.
Candace, make it happen.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Candace would probably be able to make that call.
We'll get the boy.
Yes.
Grab the boy and we'll go.
She's our boss.
The boy is the camera guy.
The boy is the boss. Candace is the boss. Yeah, that's true.
Although
Lisa's the big boss.
The boy is quite wise and makes fun of us a lot.
The boy's amazing
because we don't know how social media works, and the boy is always GIF. Do you say GIF or GIF?
I say GIF.
Yeah, so he's always GIFing us like.
Yeah,
because we're just so terrible, and he makes fun of us a lot. Yeah, Austin's hilarious, and I always get along well with him. I think I just
shout out to World of Oz Media.
I tend to gravitate towards him when we go to events for Real TV because we get along pretty well.
He and Nico are both amazing creatures.
Yes.
They're both
Nico's
fantastic.
Not part of the. He doesn't.
No. He's not yet. But who knows? Who knows though?
Thank you, everybody, for
Candace
participating.
Is beaming right now because we're talking about her sons, and that's just making her. If we talk about the grandchild now, she'll just like pass out in a
child.
Bliss
you have the boy, and then you have the child.
The boy and the
baby child.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give a big thank you to my co-host Mike Chisholm. Always a pleasure, always good conversation.
Yeah, man.
Talking for almost an hour and a half, and it feels like we've been here 5 minutes.
I know.
Big shout out to Candace Chisholm, your wife, and Lisa
my much better half,
Reddle, who are two of the main hosts, including Doug. What's Doug's last name?
Doug Brown.
Doug Brown, of course. And Doug Brown,
like the color,
are three of the main hosts and producers for the Real Deal TV that will be on Shaw. So go check out YouTube. Go check out that page, like it, subscribe, share it, follow it, talk about it, eat it. Okay, maybe not eat it, but be a part of it. We will be doing some segments of World of Grey within that. And a huge shout out to Jade Roberts, who is always participating in these podcasts.
Early adopter, alpha consumer of the World of Grey.
Yes, I want people to watch this afterwards, and I want the views to go up. But more importantly, I want people to participate in this conversation because this podcast, out of the three that I've started and participated in, this one is really for the people to be part of and to help build from the ground up. And we are just getting started. We are not even on any like iTunes or
we're still in beta. We're in beta right now.
So we appreciate everyone's loyalty and respect and
all of it.
Conversation.
So much gratefulness.
So on behalf of myself, the slightly hungover Kelowna's Cougar Meat Kid Colin Cutler, and
the unnamed Mike Chisholm.
In a world divided by black and white arguments, the two of us are here to explore the World of Grey. Peace.
Peace. Love.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. That was your thing.
Love and peace. Is somebody getting bonus? YouTube's getting bonus.
YouTube.
Yo, YouTube.
I like to talk real nice to YouTube.
Nobody watched us. We're like in an empty room on YouTube.
But we can share this afterward.
And we will. We'll share it. We'll share it to the YouTube people.